fake money, fake teachers, fake assets. In 1971, President Richard Nixon took the U.S. dollar off the gold standard, turning the U.S. dollar into fiat money, government money, fake money. In 2008, the world economy crashed when fake assets, fake mortgages, and fake financial experts led us down a path to ruin. Think about this. Why do schools choose not to teach us about money? Why are 78% of all Americans living paycheck to paycheck? Why are students staggering under $1 trillion in student loan debt? Because a fake world makes the rich richer and the poor and middle class poorer, and that's exactly how the government wants it. The only way to protect yourself is to learn how to separate the real from the fake. Go to richdad.com to get your copy of Fake by Robert Kiyosaki and learn how to spot the manipulation of reality we live with every day. Don't get fooled again. Get your copy of Fake by Robert Kiyosaki at richdad.com. That's richdad.com.
This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. It's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And today we're talking about happier, healthier, and wealthier. That's what the Rich Dad Show is about. Happy, wealthy, healthier. And how do you achieve that? Is it by getting more things, more money, more stuff? So it's a very important program, health, wealth, and happiness via education. And that's what Rich Dad is all about. So a very important show, a very special guest. She's been on it before. And her name is Gretchen Rubin. And she's a best-selling author and speaker and one of the most influential and thought-provoking observers of happiness and human nature. So I'll say it again. Will more stuff, will you that new BMW, a new Rolls Royce, a new Lamborghini, the new clothes, a new bag, the new shoes, will that make you happier, healthier, and wealthier? Comments, Kim?
Well, this is a great guest in Gretchen Rubin, and I don't know if many of you remember the Happiness Project that she did back in 2015, all about how to be happy. And this is going to be really interesting because it's a different take on what to do to be happy, what to do to be more wealthy. And it's not a difficult thing to do. We can all do it. We can all do it starting today. So with that, I would love to introduce Gretchen. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be talking to you again.
So you have a new book coming out called Outer Order, Inner Calm. What's it about?
What I've noticed and since I've been writing about happiness and human nature for many years is that for most people, not for everyone, but for most people, outer order contributes to inner calm more than really it seems like it should. Because you're like, it's not such a big deal to have a crowded coat closet, yet over and over I feel, and people tell me that they feel, that when they get control over the stuff of their life, they feel more in control of their life generally. They feel more energetic, more optimistic, more focused, more able to tackle challenges. And so this is all about why do we feel that way, how do we get there, and then how do we stay there?
Well, Gretchen, that's really perfect because yesterday I was looking at my closet and it's full of stuff that I bought but I've never used. I mean, I am an addictive shopper, as Kim will tell you.
Yes, he is.
And so I started throwing things I haven't used. And it was really hard because I paid $85 for that. I paid $100 for that. And then suddenly it's just going in this pile. That pile was so big, it took 2 carloads to get it out of there just from one small closet. And the pain was how much money I spent, but how much I wasn't using it. And it was just cluttering up my life.
Well, one thing that's comforting sometimes, because I think that's a very common feeling, is to think like, well, I have spent this money on it, but right now it's going to waste because I'm not using it. If I give it away, then it will go and kind of fulfill its little destiny. It's a valuable thing, but I'm not using it. So let me put it in the hands of someone who will put it to good use. And that can sometimes make it easier to let go of things where we feel like, gosh, I paid good money for this, but I really just have never put it to use.
And Gretchen, you say this book is not just about, organizing your shelves and your kitchen cabinets and all of this. It's really about creating an environment that is productive and calming and happier for you. Is that correct? I mean, is this more about creating the environment that you thrive in?
Exactly. I think you really emphasize something important, which is what is the best environment for you? Because some people are simplicity lovers and they want minimalism, and some people are abundance lovers and they like abundance and profusion and collections and choice. And it's not that one way is better and one way is worse, or one way is right and one way is wrong, but just people like to be in different environments. But no matter what whether you like abundance or simplicity, nobody likes having random mystery cords that you don't know what that's for, or like files on the
I got all those cords.
Like,
I got all those old Apple phone cords that don't do anything.
Right? But you feel like, what do you do with them? And so that's just in the way. That's just blocking you. So I think some people want to end up with a lot more stuff at the end of it, but they still want to get rid of the things that they don't need, don't use, don't love. But I don't think that everybody wants to get down to minimalism, because some people do, some people don't.
The Japanese are very, very minimalist. I mean, you go into the house, they got nothing. And I'm Japanese, but that's not me. And I'm kind of a collector, almost a pack rat, but I collect kind of expensive stuff. And I try and throw it away, but every time I throw it away or get rid of it or sell it, I feel terrible. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not a minimalist, that's for sure, even though I'm Japanese.
And I notice too, when I go to throw things away, there's so many memories attached to something, and I'm like, I don't want to throw away those memories, even though I haven't used this thing for 4 years.
So Gretchen, this is my thing. What you're talking about, I think, what I call clutter, like all those extra cords and things. I have no idea where they come from, where they're going to, in my drawers. How does a person overcome that? I'm afraid if I throw it away, what if I need it? That's what pops up in my brain.
Well, and it's interesting because you're talking about many kinds of clutter. Like, one is just like things that seem valuable that you spent money on, but now you don't really want them. Things that have emotional attachments, so they feel valuable because of sentiment. And then things that are just like, ooh, I don't even know what this is for, but maybe it's important. It's like a vacuum cleaner attachment, but I don't really know what it's for, but maybe one day I'll just desperately want it because I'll feel like I need it. So one of the things you can do with things that you think that you might need is you can put those in a box, and you can and you can label it something like important things that I don't know, potentially important things that I don't know if they are important, and just put it aside. And then over the course of, say, a year, if you find yourself going in there to find something, it's there, you know where it is. And if after a year you don't need anything in the box, you can just throw it away without looking at it. Because there's a lot of things. We have this in my family with remote controls. It feels like we have all these remote controls that no one's ever used, but we're scared to get rid of them. But, if we've never used them, why do we feel like we need to keep them?
Well, Gretchen, what I really like on your message, though, is that we're different environments with different people. But you're not talking about necessarily that. You're talking about the stuff that kind of clogs our life up.
Yes, and our minds up.
But it's all the different kinds sort of turn into each other, because perhaps the kind that you talk about where you're buying things because they're very enticing, but then you don't use them, sometimes that's related to a fantasy self. So there's a fantasy, I'm going to learn to play guitar. I'm going to learn to do yoga. I'm going to start meditating. I'm going to do hand weights. I'm going to be a nature photographer. So then we buy things thinking like, this will come into my life in a way. But then it's really a fantasy self, and it's really like, no, you're not going to learn how to play guitar. So you don't need that stand, you don't need that guitar, you don't need those music books.
Isn't that what infomercials thrive on?
Yeah, exactly. You got it. But it can be painful to let go of that fantasy, because not only are you letting go of the stuff that you've never really used, and that feels bad, but also you're letting go of it, a sense of yourself as someone who might possibly learn to play guitar, which sounds so appealing. It's hard to let go of that.
And all the books I don't read. That's a big pile. There's this huge minimalist movement now, getting rid of everything and going down to nothing almost, which I could probably like. But also, I like what Gretchen is saying. It's really about the environment that makes you calmer, happier, more productive, or happier, healthier, and wiser. So when we come back, we'll find out about why your environment impacts your success, not just your happiness.
You're listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Don't be like Charlie. Charlie is that do-it-yourselfer who does himself in. Do-it-yourself is good for tile and grout. It is not good for asset protection. Charlie thought he'd save a few dollars forming his LLC online. With no guidance, he did it wrong. When he sold the property, he lost thousands and thousands of dollars. He did himself in by trying to do it himself. Don't burn yourself. Use Corporate Direct to set up and maintain your LLCs and corporations. Corporate Direct is owned and operated by attorney and rich dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Garrett wrote the bestsellers Loopholes of Real Estate and Start Your Own Corporation. He is Robert Kiyosaki's attorney for asset protection. He and his team will do it right. Visit them at corporatedirect.com or call 800-600-1760. Mention Rich Dad and receive $100 off your formation fee. That's corporatedirect.com. corporatedirect.com.
What is your number one expense in life? Your number one expense. It's taxes. And I've asked the question is, how come there's no financial education in school, but why isn't there education on taxes either? You know, they tell you to save money, which is stupid. They tell you to invest in the stock market, which is stupid. But what they teach you about taxes. So here we have Rich Dad advisor Tom Wheelwright. We're talking about his revision for his book, Tax-Free Wealth. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Robert.
So what's the tax-free wealth about? What's different this time? It's a revised edition.
Well, so what we did was this is the first major tax reform we've had in 30 years, 2017.
Was 86 was the last one?
86 was the last one back when I was in Washington, D.C.
So many guys got wiped out because of that tax change.
They did. They did. It wiped out an entire industry, savings and loans. This new tax law is just as big, but in a very different way. It affects different industries. You know, the tax law is always a series of incentives. And the question is always which incentives and which ones apply to me. And so the key to revising tax-free wealth was what changed so much in this new tax law that we can absolutely take advantage of. Seriously, the amazing incentives. For example, the bonus depreciation, for example, for real estate is unbelievable. You buy a $1 million apartment, get a $300,000 deduction or more the very first year.
So if you want to make more money and pay less taxes like Donald Trump and myself, get Tom's book, Tax-Free Wealth.
It pays to listen. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad Radio Show.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. What we're talking about is there's this TV show called Hoarders. And I look at that show, and you guys, if you want, you want to be shocked and I don't know what to say about it, but these people are living under piles of trash, and it's in their house. They've got their stored since the time that dinosaurs walked the earth. They got old pizza boxes still there. They won't throw them away. Now, I can laugh at them, but I'm not much different. So that's what we're talking about today is how clutter or your environment affects your life, your productivity, your success, your wealth, and your happiness. It's a very important show. And you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime, anywhere on iTunes or Android, and all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. And this program is archived, all our programs, because, repetition is how we learn. And if you listen to this program again, you'll hear something new and different, or your whole mind will expand. And this is especially true for friends, family, and business associates, especially if you have a pack rat, a hoarder, a clutterer, or somebody in your family who can't throw something away. And I think we all have one of those people. I'm pretty bad, but I got family members who make me look pretty neat and tidy. So our guest today is Gretchen Rubin. She's a best-selling author, speaker, the author of Outer Order, Inner Calm. Her website is GretchenRubin.com. Kim, any comments?
Well, I'm excited to talk with Gretchen because it's a lot more than just, tidying up your shelves and getting rid of stuff. And she says that outer order being basically taking care of your environment and making it work for you. Outer order helps us focus our attention, time, energy, and money on the tasks, people, places, activities, and values that matter most to us. And I think everybody would like that.
So Gretchen, have you seen that TV show, The Hoarders?
Yes, I have.
What do you think is going? Because I got part of that disease. I'm just not as bad. I don't save old pizza boxes. But what do you think's going on?
Well, I think that there's a distinction between kind of the average person who has like a lot of stuff in their attic, their basement, their garage, every drawer is full, and then there's people who truly are hoarders, and that's really a form of mental illness. The people who are, crushed by their own belongings or, are getting reported to the neighborhood watch. So I think that kind of colloquially we talk about people who are pack rats, who find it really hard to get rid of things, that, are always kind of being like, well, I can just stick this in this drawer and I'll just put it here, for the next 30 years and never look at it again.
That's me.
Yep. So I think, and part of the problem is if you live in the same place, a great way to get rid of clutter, either at home or at work, is when you move. You get a new job, you get a new house, and you just end up getting rid of a lot of stuff along the way. So if you're moving, you tend to, you clean out your files or you clean out your closets. But when you stay in the same place for 30, 40 years, you can pack a lot even into a one-bedroom apartment in New York City. Now, let alone if you have a house in the suburbs that's got real space in it, a lot of stuff can get in there to the point where it's very overwhelming of thinking about really trying to see daylight at the back of a closet or emptying out a chest of drawers.
Well, let me give you another extreme example. I was in Northern California with my friend John McGregor, and it was a beautiful neighborhood, and there's this beautiful old house, but in the front yard is an old recliner, an old sofa. They just throw their junk in the front yard. I mean, and I just can't believe this nice neighborhood let these people get away with that.
It was probably a source of great conflict and consternation.
Right. Whereas anyway, it's just shocking what some, the extremes. But what I'm saying is I'm not free of that. I mean, I do the same thing. I just don't put it in my front yard for everybody to look at my junk.
So
Right,
Gretchen,
right.
so you say that, once you declutter your life, that you get more happy, you get more productive, you get more successful. So do you have examples of people who have done that?
My favorite example is a friend of mine who said, I finally cleaned out my fridge, and now I know I can switch careers. And I knew exactly how that felt. A lot of times people feel kind of blocked or stagnant, or they're really kind of feeling overwhelmed.
Yep.
And there is something about the process of cleaning out, and even if it's not related, you might be having a lot of trouble writing the annual report, or thinking about redoing your resume or something like that. And yet there is something about going through a medicine cabinet, going through a coat closet, where it feels like now the water is kind of rushing more freely and clean through your brain. Now, here's the problem. Sometimes people procrastinate. This is when they use clutter clearing as a way to procrastinate. I don't want to write the annual report. And so I started thinking, well, I have to clean out my entire office, which is messy, but it's never bothered me before. But now I feel like I can't possibly write this annual report, which is due on Friday, until every bit of clutter is cleared up. So sometimes it's used as procrastination, but there's unhelpful procrastination in the form of clutter clearing, but there's also helpful preparation, because often the process of clearing clutter does help us focus, does help us zoom in on what's important. It does make us feel like we're making room in our brains and on our desktops and on our shelves to focus on what is most important.
I can feel the clutter going from my brain right now. Quick question is, if you have a company, let's say 200 people in it, how do you instill the orderly or anti-clutter culture inside a company?
Well, this is very important. It's more important now with open offices because everybody's in kind of a shared space. So if you're like some super messy person, you're not squirreled off in your own private office. You might be out in the middle where everybody's looking at it. And as somebody who's a simplicity lover myself, I feel the stress of even walking through offices like that because it's very visually overwhelming for me. And I just want to go around and I'm like, why do you have all these desks on your, you clearly aren't using this tower of books. Let's put this on a shelf. And it's, so it can be difficult. And I remember I was in an office building in New York City, and clearly the guy who was head of one of the offices that was on this floor had for some reason pulled all of his employees into the hallway, into the elevator bank, and was giving them not a lecture, but really in a kind way saying, look, people come to us for the top job, and we're charging the top rates. And when they walk in here and they see junk on the floor and junk on the shelves and just this whole place is just a mess, we can't present ourselves like this. And I thought it was really interesting because it was part of it is for you and your own productivity, but part of it is also the public face that you present to clients and customers who are coming in. Part of how we evaluate people is, do you seem like you've got your act together, or do you feel like there's just a bunch of stuff? there's an old dusty glass vase for somebody who got Valentine's flowers 7 months ago and it's just sitting on the top of a filing cabinet? Or are there files on the floor because somebody put them there and then nobody's gone and picked them up? Or are there office supplies just randomly sitting on some random chair in the lobby? I mean, I've seen all these things.
So
they don't inspire you with confidence, you know?
So what's the negative effect of let's say, a cluttered, dirty, messy environment in an office, or the productivity of an office?
Well, I think partly it's people can't find what they need because those office supplies aren't in the office supply cabinet. Then people don't realize where it is. It sends a very poor message to the people who work there, as well as the clients and customers and vendors, et cetera, who come visit. It slows people down because there's just junk in their way. I mean, I suggest in the book that you might have but part of the problem in an office is a lot of times things are sort of in limbo. I see that those files don't belong on the floor, but they're not my files, so I can't just throw them away. But it's nobody's job to figure out who they belong to and whether they're needed. And so they just sit there because they belong to no one. Maybe the person who they belong to left 6 months ago. And so you kind of need to give someone the authority to walk around and be like, whose is this? Why is this here? I'm moving this. This is wrong. This is trash. This goes in the recycling. You can't have this out on your desk. It just does not look good. You could have like a chief clutter officer who has the authority
Chief
to do
clutter
that.
officer, I like that. Yeah, we have one of those at our office.
We do.
Her name is Kathy.
Kathy makes sure it's not cluttered, boy.
Yeah, and you talk about too your desktop. I mean, my desktop on my computer, sometimes it's overlapping because there's so much junk on it.
Yeah.
And just to get that cleared off feels better.
Yes.
It's a good thing.
The home screens on your phone. Yeah, these things make a difference.
It's a good thing Kim and I are not neat freaks. They would have killed each other. Because we are messy.
So, Gretchen, for our listeners who want to get more order in their lives, where do you start? Where do they start?
Okay, the first thing to do is don't get organized. Because a lot of times people are like, I need a filing cabinet and files and folders, and I need to go out and get this gizmo and everything. It's like, no. The first thing to do is to get rid of everything that you don't need, want, or love. So if you get rid of everything you don't need, like maybe you think you need to file all these papers, but maybe you can just toss them. Do you need them? Like, let's say it's an appliance manual. Like, you don't need an appliance manual anymore because you can just look it up online. Get rid of the appliance manuals. So you don't need to organize them. You can just get rid of them. And so the first thing to do is to really be disciplined with yourself and get rid of everything that you don't actually need, use, or love. And then a lot of times you end up with something you don't really need to organize it at all. It just like fits on a shelf, or maybe you don't have that category of thing anymore at all. So the first thing to start with is elimination, always. And then I would say the next thing is, and it's interesting because people have different arguments about where you, like, just physically where you start. Do you start with clothes? Do you start with books? Do you start with papers? I think start with whatever bothers you the most. If it's the top of a chest of drawers in your bedroom, start there. If it's the credenza in your office, start there. Because to me, these are irritants. Every time you look at it, it's just like this thing that is like, what's there? I don't know. Where does it go? I should deal with that. It's ugly. And when things are cluttered, they tend to become more cluttered. Mess attracts mess. And if you have a clutter magnet, it will keep getting worse and worse. The pile will keep growing. And so if you get rid of that, a lot of times then it's much easier to maintain it because you don't have just like a pile of junk there. You just have some loose change. And then you're like, well, why don't I put the loose change in my loose change jar instead of leaving it on this surface for the next 18 months, which a lot of people will do, And then the problem comes when you have an important tax form that's somewhere in that clutter pile and you can't find it because you're just overwhelmed with junk. And so then you've got a big problem. The more we put things away, the more easily we can find them. And that saves a tremendous amount of time. There's this crazy. Some studies suggest that Americans spend up to an hour a day looking for things.
That's us.
And that is something you can address. You can fix that. That's time you can get back. If you feel like I don't have time to read, it's like, okay, well, figure out where to keep your keys. So I think that's a good place to start is with the piles that are really or the messes that are really dragging you down. For some people, that's toys. For some people, that's clothes. For some people, that's papers, bills, documents, things of that kind. we're all a little different when it comes to what kind of clutter we create and what bothers us the most.
Gretchen, that's fantastic. I mean, you're hurting me right now, but I won't try and organize because I'm not good at organizing, but I can get rid of stuff. But anyway, a very important book, Outer Order, Inner Calm, Declutter and Organize to Make More Room for Happiness. And we all want more health, wealth, and happiness.
Yes,
right?
we do. And I love that Gretchen has a manifesto for Outer Order. And one of the things is store things at the store, meaning don't buy it.
Yes.
I love it.
It'll be there when you need it. Yeah.
Well, we look forward to your book and look forward to reading it, Gretchen.
So thank you.
Thank you for your good work you're doing.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And once again, Gretchen's website is GretchenRubin.com. Very important book in today's world of too much. And when we come back, we'll be going to the next most popular part of our program, which is Ask Robert.
You're listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Don't be like Charlie. Charlie is that do-it-yourselfer who does himself in. Do-it-yourself is good for tile and grout. It is not good for asset protection. Charlie thought he'd save a few dollars forming his LLC online. With no guidance, he did it wrong. When he sold the property, he lost thousands and thousands of dollars. He did himself in by trying to do it himself. Don't burn yourself. Use Corporate Direct to set up and maintain your LLCs and corporations. Corporate Direct is owned and operated by attorney and rich dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Garrett wrote the bestsellers Loopholes of Real Estate and Start Your Own Corporation. He is Robert Kiyosaki's attorney for asset protection. He and his team will do it right. Visit them at corporatedirect.com or call 800-600-1760. Mention Rich Dad and receive $100 off your formation fee. That's corporatedirect.com. corporatedirect.com.
Financial freedom begins with financial education. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad Radio Show.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Once again, thank you to Gretchen Rubin, best-selling author and speaker, one of today's most influential and thought-provoking observers of happiness and human nature. And so you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio Show on Android or iTunes. All of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com, and especially this program here, you should listen to it again because one of the reasons people go broke is they buy stuff they don't need. I mean, that's really, really simple. They don't buy things that make them richer. They buy things that make them poorer, and that is ridiculous, but that's part of the addictive bad habit. You know, like I have those bad habits too. But that's why people are poor, because they can't control their spending. They buy stuff they don't need or use or want, and then it just sits there cluttering up the place. So you can listen to this program one more time at richdadradio.com. Again, it's for you to expand your mind and make some changes in your life. That's what we stand for, health, wealth, and happiness. But also have your friends, family, and associates listen to it and discuss it, and you'll find your lives change. Any comments, Kim?
Well, there's a lot of good things in this book. Two things. One, she talks about these fantasy items, and she hit home with me because she said people buy things because they think someday I'm going to be an artist, so they buy all the art tools and the easel and the canvases, and then they never start. And she said, or nature photography. So at Christmas, I bought the new camera and the big lens, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to take all these pictures. So now I better stick to my plan and do it.
Well, the good thing about Kim's little fantasy things, they're not as expensive as my stupid things. And my things are really stupid and expensive because I collect antique guns. And I was just saying to the staff here is that I was at a gun show, which I don't need to go to, but I like old guns. There's a difference between a weapon and an antique gun. There's a very big difference. They don't come in the same category. So I was looking at this Civil War pistol, and it was up for sale for $1.2 million. And I went, oh, my God, I have one of those. There's only a few made. I bought it years ago. So I went running home, and I saw there's it's called a Colt Dragoon, number 93. And I sat there, and then what she was saying was, if it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't make you.
But if you don't need it, use it or love it.
Yeah.
Get rid of it.
And I love the damn thing. It just sits there. It's a lot of money just sitting there collecting dust. But I do love the gun because I sold an old antique shotgun once, and I still miss it. That's really stupid because I would never have used the damn thing. But that's really what Gretchen is talking about here. It's the insanity that keeps us insane and poor, buying things we don't need that take up space.
Well, and just look at your office. I mean, to our listeners, look at your office.
Holy mackerel.
And she said, don't get organized. Get rid of stuff. So I'm gonna organize my office. So now I'm gonna get the new filing cabinet, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna buy this, and I'm gonna buy that. And she's like, no, just get rid of stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, my
that's really
office
good.
always looks like a bomb went off in it. There's
and
papers everywhere.
And get her book because she is a manifestor for outer order. And number 16 is Clutter Attracts Clutter. That's me. I got more clutter piling up. I got no space for the clutter. And the other one is store things at the store. I have a rule. If I get all excited about buying it, I have to wait 3 days. And generally I still buy it, but anyway, it doesn't work.
And I like this one from her manifesto. Creating outer order isn't a matter of having less or having more. It's a matter of wanting what you have. So it goes back to, do you love it? Does it bring you joy? Does it make you happy? Keep it. If not, toss it.
So again, there's 18 manifestos in her Manifesto for Outer Order, and as part of her book, Outer Order Inner Calm. And if you want to get richer and happier and wealthier, it's a very important book because we all have our own addictions and habits that we do really stupid things with our money. So really, that's why I'm really happy to have Gretchen Rubin on our show. And once again, you can submit your questions to AskRobert@richdadradio.com. So Melissa, what's the first question?
Our first question today comes from Brianne in Coppell, Texas. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Robert and Kim, I love how you shared your interest in personal development with your listeners. You talk about how important these rituals are. My question is, could you please share with us again what you do to set the tone for your day, and what systems do you both use for organizing your to-do list?
Well, that's an important question because that thought of personal development, it's all relative. What some people think of as personal development is they sit there, they look at their watch, and they think about all the things that are happy. I'm going, that's pretty lightweight. It's the same thing as physical development. Our friend Blair Singer, he climbs Kilimanjaro twice in the same year. I can't even go up the flight of stairs. That's his physical development and my personal development are two different, we're completely different beings. So I hear so many people say, well, I'm into personal development. But it's pretty lightweight from my experience. And Kim knows that I've been in this personal development things for years and years and years. And I keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. So it's all relative to what is personal development. And what I do right now, I really can't talk about because I'd have to kill you if I told you, but it's pretty extreme stuff. Just like climbing Kilimanjaro twice in the same year. It's pretty extreme. But that's how we start. Any comments, Kim?
Yeah, well, I mean, you and I both have morning rituals that we do in our practice, but as you say, it goes deeper and deeper. So for me, for example, every morning I read something from a book like The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle or Awareness by a gentleman named DeMello. And I read a part of it, and I've been reading the same books for years, and I take something from that book, and then I make that my practice for the day. Being present, practice being present, practice being grateful, practice watch your mind judging, and I really practice it intensely for the day. And I like to then journal, and I'm working on meditating more often. But those are things that, for me, kind of set the mood for my day.
Yeah, but I think the book that I found the best for me personally, kind of straightened my brain out, is called Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, E-L-R-O-D. I recommend it highly. It's a very simply written book. It's the first hour of your day sets up your day. And it is one of the most important books. I practice it pretty regularly. But the thing I thought was interesting was I asked people to meditate, because I never meditated. And I read this book. It says it takes about a year to make it a habit. And so I just did it for a year. Maybe it's because I'm a former Marine. Discipline is pretty easy for me, except climbing Kilimanjaro. I won't do that. But anyway, just sit there to meditate for half an hour a day. I ran into so much hell from people. How dare you do that? You can't make me do that. I'm going, it's the easiest thing in the world you can do. You don't have to do anything. You're not supposed to even think. Meditation is to stop thinking is really what it is. and go into this quiet space. But for half an hour a day, which is what Hal Elrod in his Miracle Morning recommends, I ran into more grief from people on that. And I'm going, Jesus, you just sit there for half an hour. Oh. And what happens, I believe, is people run into their addictions and their habits and their suppressions and their obsessions, So that's why I love Miracle Morning, because it was just a start of a practice. And, Buddhism isn't a religion. Buddhism is a practice. And really it is what you practice every day, where a religion is when you're told to do something. And there's very big differences between a practice and doing something. So, or believing something and drinking the Kool-Aid on the whole thing. So there's a whole, when somebody says, personal development, that's like saying I exercise. You know what I mean? Well, what do you do for exercise? Well, I walk around the block. Oh, good. Wonderful. You know what I mean? For some people, that's about all they can handle. That's me. And there's guys like our friend Blair Singer who will climb. He went up Kilimanjaro, comes down, takes a week off, picks up another group, goes up Kilimanjaro and back. And every time I see pictures of Blair, I go, I don't think so. I mean, you have any ambition of climbing Kilimanjaro?
No, I'm good with what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
I got my exercise routine down pretty well.
So personal development, physical development, mental development, spiritual development, it's all relative is what I'm going to say. But that's why I like the book Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. It's really, really easy, but most people can't do it. Half an hour. Sit silently. Every person on earth could do it, but more crap comes up when I listen to them. And it's all their addictions and their, it's like right now I'm on this 21-day cleanse. The first 5 days are absolute hell. Absolute hell. I mean, all the addictions, the pain, the misery, the headaches, the I want to eat my pizza come up, and that's what keeps people unhealthy. It's the addictions to whatever is cluttering up their insides. Gretchen talks about the outside, but it's the addictions that clutter up the inside. Addictions, obsessions. But anyway, since before I met Kim, that's what I've been into. I want to find out, how do I get myself, declutter myself, mentally, spiritually, and financially. So that's what we're about here at Rich Dad, Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Colt in Denver, Colorado. Favorite book, Rich Dad's Guide to Investing. With the start of a new year, I'm curious if you and Kim do goal setting and planning for the year. If so, what is your system or process?
Well, we used to do it once a year, right, Kim?
Yeah,
we used
to climb up to a mountain. We used to climb a mountain and get a spot, and we'd sit there and we would do our goals for the year. What we would do is we would celebrate our wins for the year before. And that's really, really important, because if you don't celebrate your wins, your mind starts playing games with you. So we would celebrate all our wins, and then we would set our goals for the new year.
And then we would stand it was my our friend Larry, one of my best friends. He called it proposal point, because that's where he proposed to his wife. And big mistake in his life. No, I'm really kidding. But anyway, he used to stand up there, so we call it proposal point. And we would stand on proposal point, and after we celebrated our wins, we would yell our goal. Like, I'm going to run 2 miles a day or 3 miles. I'm going to make $1 million this year, whatever it is. We'd yell it out and yell it. And here's all these people walking below us on New Year's Day, and we'd be screaming from the top of Proposal Point. And you go through your embarrassment. You go, oh my God, what am I look like an idiot up here and all this. But yelling and screaming it is physical. Not just thinking. Thinking is physical also, but you yell and scream it. And it kind of becomes more real inside of your mental, emotional, spiritual, physical being. So a lot of people just think, and thinking, if you read a lot of the spiritual books, thinking is one of the worst things you can do. That's why meditation is important, because meditation is to stop thinking. Because when you're thinking, it's your ego thinking, not your spirit. Very, very big differences in personal development. So we thank you for that question. It's one of the reasons Kim and I are in this business. We don't recommend things. We don't advise you to buy things. But we do want you to be happier, healthier, and wealthier. And most of that starts with outside of you, but most importantly, inside of you. Final words, Kim?
Well, I like that you say that, because Gretchen's book, Outer Order, to me is really about your outer environments are really a reflection of who you are. And so that's a good place to start. And when you can see outside what's going on, that also affects what's going on inside, which is why it's so important that why we work so hard on ourselves to get healthier, happier, and wealthier in the process.
So glad you say that, because if you don't clean up yourself, you can't understand what's going on inside. If your inside is cluttered, you cannot think clearly. And that's, I think, is one of the most beautiful things about some of these new books coming out. They're not new, but the idea of mindfulness and all that is really to get out of your mind, because your spirit doesn't think. If you can get that thing, and that's why meditation, in my opinion, I've been doing it now for about 5 years, and it's working for me. But it allows me to not think. And when I not think, I can clear out the old clutter, and then new ideas, new creativity, and new beings come out of me, a new way of seeing life comes out of me. So I want to thank Gretchen Rubin for her outer order, inner calm is how do you get decluttered on the outside, and we're talking about Miracle Morning is how to get decluttered on the inside. And once again, you can submit your questions to Ask Robert at richdadradio.com, and thank you for listening to this program.